put two other, or really refinements of issues already on the table to the panel before we open it up. The first is exactly what you were talking about, Kamal, and that is this issue of regionalism, regional integration, and the democratization of the process. Because I agree with what you were saying in that these experiments in regional integration need deep social roots. Otherwise, they're very vulnerable. In my own country, our union fell apart in the 1860s, and it was only after the Civil War that people began to think of themselves as Americans first, and Virginians or Marylanders second. And that was critical to the stability of our union. But at the same time, what seems to have happened in Europe is that the union has been politicized. People now talk about Europe in the street, but not in good terms. And is there a risk of bringing people in, of getting more popular participation, but making the process more difficult as a result? And how does one deal with that balance? And the other issue that I think came up several times is the tension between globalization and regional integration. And I wonder whether the panel feels that the scope, the speed, the size of global flows are so great today that it makes it extremely difficult for governments, whether it's the American government, the German government, Brussels, to hold control of their destinies. Forces bigger than government policy are pushing us around. Do we need more regulation? Do we need a system that can prevent the kind of whiplashing that we've seen politically? And I'm wondering, Minister Fu, whether you might say a few words about China's own thinking on the question of contributing to the bailout fund here in Europe. There was a discussion about emerging powers with surpluses helping out Europe. Could you say a few things about that? Who would like to jump in on those issues?
I'll just say a few words quickly on democratization, since it's come up here as well several times, and I think we hear more and more people talking about the need for direct elections in the European Union and so forth. I think that one of the things we really have to do is figure out what kind of institutional arrangements we have. I mean, being a very strong supporter of greater democratization of the European Union, I think it will only be possible through a federalization, because if you have large and small, large countries and small countries, if you have direct elections to the European Parliament, I mean to the European President of the Council or the Commission, then you will never, no small member will ever be able to be elected there. And I think that would in fact lead to the Union actually losing a number of members, small members. I mean, it's like the Melian dialogues of Thucydides. The small do what they must, and the large do what they can. I mean, one of the successes of the European Union has been that the small have felt fairly comfortable in the presence of a Germany and a France. But I think that if we want to have increased democracy, then we will have to have a genuine proportional representation, but also a Senate like something else where each one has one vote, large or small, which means a bicameral legislation, but that would certainly, a legislature would certainly be better than the current condition where in the European Parliament, where I had the pleasure to serve for a while, I mean, basically one Estonian is worth 16 Germans. Because that's the ratio between number of MEPs from Estonia versus for our population, how many MEPs there are from Germany. I don't think that's satisfying to Germany. On the other hand, if we went proportional, strictly proportional in a one-cameral, one-house parliament, then I mean there'd be half an Estonian there, right? So it doesn't. We need some kind of institutional solution to those issues before we can proceed with the democratization. And I think that basically federalization is the way to go. And in fact, that's what the United States did, right?
Well,
just very quickly on that point. I think there will always have to be this balance between the nation states that form the European family and the population at large, the citizens. However, I would like to maybe slightly disagree with President Invest, not disagree, but try to stress another point, that if there is more European democracy, if the political parties cut across borders more easily, then you know, a vigorous social democrat or a vigorous Christian democrat from a very small country, but who has big standing in Europe, might very well get directly elected, because people will not elect, or in that kind of Europe, people will not elect an Estonian or a Hungarian or a Portuguese, but they will elect somebody who best represents their aspirations. Again, I think we're quite some ways from there, but I think one can think in those terms. In the US, you know, President Clinton was from Arkansas, one of the smallest states, but he rose to become the leader of the Democratic Party. So I don't necessarily think that the smallness of the country in the long run should disqualify the political leadership of people from these countries who are powerful personalities and who can take a leadership role in a pan-European context.
This would be good, but 7 years after enlargement, the new member states are vastly underrepresented in any senior positions in the European Commission. It's rather disgusting, I would actually say, the idea being apparently that old member states citizens are smarter. But in any case, it's true. I mean, we're going into our, I mean, it's 7 years since the enlargement, almost 8. And it's still the case that if you look at the distribution of directorates and so forth, there is virtually no serious attempt to have an equal representation around the Union, and that's just life.
Mr. Fu.
Let me answer the question about China's contribution about the bailing out efforts for Europe. I was recently misquoted, even in quotation marks, about China shouldn't touching its reserves to save Europe. I don't need to explain to the audience this about what is the reserve, how the reserve is managed, you know, where and why. But I need to clarify one thing. The repeated discussions about whether China and the BRICS should save Europe is a misleading concept. I don't know how you feel when it's in English, in French, or in German. When it's translated into Chinese, it sounds like a development aid. And that's not what you are talking about, isn't it? I think Europe needs partners. And in that sense, China has been a very important participant. Throughout the efforts of 2009, China contributed 50 billion to IMF in London. And China has been making strong efforts investing in Europe in recent years. Our investment is growing faster than any other time, in spite of the different views in Europe about Chinese investment. And we've sent about 30 purchasing teams to Europe since the financial crisis. That's why our import from Europe is growing at 2-digit numbers. Next year, we have a plan to increase our import from Europe. I think the kind of thing we want to do is to be part of the effort to stimulate the economy, to increase the jobs opportunities, to be part of the European effort. But China has 120 million people living at $1 a day. So it's not the kind of country rich enough to talk about saving others. But doesn't mean that China is trying to stay away from this global effort, because as his All Holiness said, that we are all interdependent. I also want to talk a bit about this imbalance. I agree with you that the world needs to be more balanced, and China has been increasing its domestic consumption. But we should not confuse the two things. The difficulties some of the countries are in is not because China is not consuming more. I'll give you an example. For the iPhone, which is made in China, and China makes $6 out of one manufacturing. And that $6 probably landed out. If those who borrow the $6 leveraged it 40 times and spend it on some consumption, it's not for China to help. I think these countries need to cut it down. Those countries who have made mistakes in the past by overspending need to come back to the right path of consumption. China should not be encouraged to overspend when encouraging consumption. I think China needs to keep its consumption within its ability to create wealth. And as we grow economically stronger, our consumption will go up. It is going up. I think there are two things. It should not be confused. Thank you.
Your Holiness, would you like to say anything before we go to the floor?
I would like to add a few words. It is said that we must not undermine small countries, that Europe needs partners, and so on. I have observed that we have several world organizations which have the title, the name of world, but do not include all of the world partners, so to say. We have the United Nations, but not all the nations are included. We have the World Bank, but not everybody is there. World Economic Forum, I had the honor to participate twice. And of course, not all of the countries and states are participated. We Christians have formed in the year 1948 in Amsterdam the World Council of Churches, although it is called World Council of Churches. The Roman Catholic Church is not a member. So we have to rethink about the necessity to be more inclusive and to call for participation, for contribution. All other people, nations, countries, states, because everybody has something to contribute and to help to form a global, universal society, which will be based and founded on universal principles. If this new world society is based and founded on commonly accepted values and principles, only then we can be optimistic for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take a few questions from the floor. And I think I